Hello. Today I will be making my first ever commentary on a battleship that I consider one of the two gods of T6. You can see the sheer amount of gunpowder this ship has. It's naturally the Fuso. Matchmaker threw me in T5 to T7 matchmaking, so pretty much what you can expect to end up against. Some higher tier, some lower tier. That's pretty normal at T6, what you might end up against. Now, when people ask me what the strongest ship at T6 is, I usually consider it a throwdown between the New Mexico and the Fuso. The Budionni, the Cleveland, these are all great ships, but when it comes to the true power of T6, it's these battleships. And of course, the Fuso has a significant weakness. As you can see, the detectability is 18.3 kilometers, which means you're literally spotted across the map constantly. You can see those transparent circles on the minimap. That's my detection range. So it's very hard to actually sneak up on anyone in this ship. But the good thing is you don't need to sneak up on anyone, because you make up for that lack of sneaking with sheer goddamn firepower. You have 6 turrets and 2 guns each, and you have a very short reload. I think, what was it, 26 second? I think it was 26. Could have been more. I gotta double check that. But it's significantly lower than the New Mexico that has 34. The New Mexico, of course, has other advantages like turret placement and anti-air and such. But I've already made a New Mexico commentary. I can even link it below if you guys want to see that one. I consider both of these incredibly potent at T6, simply because of the sheer firepower they have with these 12 guns, and because at T6 cruisers are very lightly armored, which means that if you get a nice shot at a broadside, you might delete a cruiser right off the bat from what, I don't even know how far away that was, but that was First Blood, Devastating Strike, Omaha deleted off the map. Bam. Well, this commentary certainly started off with a bang. So this is the reason why I consider these two like basically the gods of T6. The New Mexico and the Fuso are probably, they are so incredibly strong for this tier, just extremely potent ships. Now the problem both of these have, well, 13k to the New Mexico, hello. The problem with this is that people tend to misplay them, because especially the Fuso is probably one of the most misplayed ships in the game, because once again you have access to 20-kilometer range, and actually you have access to 22 if you get the range upgrade. But the biggest issue is that people insist on sitting at that max range constantly, and Fuso, like all battleships, is naturally a victim to battleship dispersion. So if you attempt to sit at that max range and shoot, you're obviously not gonna get the full power out of this massive gun placement that this ship is. In fact, because of dispersion, you're gonna end up getting a lot of misses, and which is a shame, because personally I consider the golden distance for the Fuso to be around, let's say, about 9 kilometers to maybe 14, 15. Anything further than 14 kilometers away and you're gonna struggle to, your dispersion is just gonna be too much of an issue for you. But at that golden distance of let's say 9 to 14, you just rain down so much firepower, and cruisers cannot dare to even get, they can't dare to even get close to anywhere near you. You zone out cruisers just by being within, let's say, 90 to 14. If you're further away than that and the cruisers pay any sort of attention, they can simply dodge and turn and avoid your shells. But at the close distance, it's very, very tricky to avoid them, because, well, that's a Pensacola. Of course, I'm surprised I didn't straight up delete him there. But cruisers cannot handle a Fuso at any sort of short range, where they are incapable of dodging his shells, because that's the only distance really lower tier cruisers have, because they don't have the armor to really tank shells, especially if they're like Clevelands and such. They can't tank anything. Omahas can't tank anything. The only ship that I can really think of straight up that I might consider being able to tank these shells would be the Budionni, because it has such excellent citadel armor, but even that one risks losing turrets and just taking huge chunks of damage. So that's why you might see my positioning on this map. I position myself right smack dab in the middle of the map, where ships are all around me are about on this, what I spoke about, the golden ratio between 9 to 14 kilometers. In fact, the ships on my right, that Pensacola I shot at, was 13 kilometers away, and oh, I have the bug now. well, I might first mention, I asked the Marblehead why he didn't rush down that Minikaze, but luckily our Colorado killed off the Minikaze, so he didn't survive. But you might see my bug I have here. I have my rudder shift maxed turned to the right, but my ship isn't actually turning. This is a bug that has been around since the release. It tends to sometimes happen. You have full turn on, but your ship refuses to turn, and basically you have to reset your rudder shift to the middle, and then you have to put it into full turn again to make your shift turn. In this case, it's rather unfortunate because this bug put me in a really bad position. I wanted, you see this island on my right, I wanted to turn to the right behind the island, but because I had a rudder shift bug, it forced my ship to sail in a straight line for a very long time, so I basically have to ground now and reverse and then get behind the island, which is unfortunate, but this glitch has been around for a while. It's very rare, but if it does happen to you, you suddenly notice your ship isn't really responding to your commands, then you just make sure you get your rudder shift centered so that it basically resets, and then you turn again, then it starts obeying your commands again. It happens sometimes. I'm not really still certain what the reason is, but it seems to come and go. I've played so many games that I'm fairly familiar with the bug. Some people might have never experienced that, but it's fairly rare, so it shouldn't be too much of an issue, but it does happen, so it's good to be aware of what's going on if your ship suddenly refuses to obey your commands. Now this York is having the luck of his life right now. In case you are noticing, I'm shooting at him and I'm constantly getting over penetrations. But of course, such is the life of a battleship when you're shooting cruisers. You won't always get those juicy citadels because you are a victim of dispersion. Even though I considered my aim to be fairly on spot, on point for his citadel, the dispersion, or perhaps his movements, whatever, once again 4 over penetrations, so not that good. Now this Mayoko, he's just gonna have to budge because I'm not gonna push in there. There's Nagata, New Mexico, Colorado, Fuso, they're all waiting for me, and there's no way I'm gonna push into that. Instead I wanna go with my original plan before the bug hit, which was to get behind this cliff, because while the Fuso is fairly strong, of course, it's a battleship, it can take some damage, hence why I recommend this a 9 to 14 kilometer gap. Well, finally got a citadel, deleted another cruiser. The reason, of course it's a battleship, so it can take a bit of damage, but the reason why I recommend keeping this distance that I just mentioned is that even though it's a strong battleship, the fact that it has so many turrets means that it has so many citadel points. Basically, underneath every turret on a battleship, and even on a cruiser, there is something called a barbette, where they house their ammunition and basically the machinery for the turret. And penetrating that part of the ship counts as a citadel, just as penetrating the engine room. So you can see at the profile of this Fuso here just how many possible places for a citadel there is. In fact, I might be able to demonstrate it here, because here's a Fuso who's giving me broadside. And Fuso giving broadside is very risky against other same tier or higher tier battleships. Well, case in point right there, double citadel, that's a Fuso deleted. I'm giving broadside because I'm undetected, of course, otherwise I would be significantly more angled, especially against the Colorado, who can easily penetrate my armor and could easily punish me with citadels. So that's something you have to be aware of when you play the Fuso is, yes, you're a battleship, but compared to the New Mexico, you are significantly more susceptible to citadels. Which is one of the reasons I always consider it a fairly much a toss-up between which one is better, New Mexico or the Fuso. They both have strong strengths, but they also both have these fairly obvious weaknesses, which become apparent if a player knows how to exploit them. But of course, if you know how to abuse the strengths as well, then, as I said, very much a toss-up, which ship is better. I'll honestly link my New Mexico commentary, because I really enjoyed both these ships. They both have their own strengths and weaknesses, and they are both, in my opinion, the strongest ships at T6. Simply because of the sheer amount of guns they can bring to bear on a target. And, well, you have seen basically how destructive this amount of guns they can bring to bear is. It's very hard to dodge 12 shells or even hope for RNG against 12 shells. One of those shells tend to land on a critical spot, like there, or double citadel there on a Nagata. That's a tier higher battleship, but even as I'm in this golden ratio I spoke about, I have no issues penetrating his armor, and because he gave broadside, if I penetrate his armor, it means I'm also citadeling him. So this all adds up to this tremendous powerhouse of a battleship. That's very, very fun to play. Bit angled, but if I get some good plunging fire, I aimed a bit higher, you might have noticed, so I hit his superstructure instead of hitting his armor, so I might get some good damage anyway. There we go. If at an angle New Mexico like that, it's unlikely you're going to be penetrating much of his hull or much of his broadside, so I just went for some hits on his superstructure for some additional damage. And the game ended. This was what, a 10-minute game, something like 10 minutes. I ended up getting a nice chunk of 146k damage, not bad, got Confederate on the way. And you might have seen my positioning on this map. I constantly hung around the middle, where I basically could constantly shoot at everything. I was never out of the battle. I was never like isolated too far away or such forth. And you might notice my damage on these cruisers is always just like 5 hits on the Omaha to kill him. Like very few actually shells landed, which is what the shells are so potent that you only need to land a few to delete these cruisers. Of course the York was a bit of an exception there, wasn't it? Anyway, I'll move on to the modules now. Right, as usual, I will start with the modules. Now the modules actually have a massive impact on how the Fuso plays. In fact, it's the B hull that's very, very important to get fast. In fact, if you're saving up 3 XP, I recommend you save up 3 XP until you get the Fuso, and then you spend it on this B hull upgrade as soon as possible. Because the A hull on the Fuso is a disaster. Let me show you. Your main battery firing range with the A hull is 13.2 kilometers. As you can see, your main battery guns, they have the worse firing of worse reload time as well. It's just a complete disaster. You have 13.2 kilometer range, and of course your HP is also 45k HP. Your armor is worse significantly in every single way. It just, the difference between the A and the B hull is like 2 different ships. So and of course the AA, well, we don't even need to get into that. This is your AA with this mod, and then when you upgrade it, like huge difference. So the very first thing you should get is the B hull. That's the very first upgrade. Once you've gotten the B hull, then you can upgrade your engine to get some speed, and then finally you can get the C hull. B to C isn't that big of an upgrade, but A to B is a massive one. So this is definitely your primary objective. The additional range, as you can see, I've never actually gotten it because I don't see the need. You have a 19.8 kilometer range without this range upgrade. I don't see any reason to spend 6.5k XP and 640k credits on range that I will most likely pretty much never use. I mean, if I really want to take pot shots at someone before I get into range, or as I'm sailing into range, I can just use the spotter plane for it. So I consider this range upgrade entirely useless. Consumable wise, as usual, I always recommend the damage control premium version, which you can get by clicking this little thing here. Highly recommended for the reduced cooldown, which is especially on battleships extremely significant, since you get HE spent and you have very long reload cooldowns anyways, or repair cooldowns. I also recommend this better repair, not as necessary as the repair, but the heal is you get an additional charge and a shorter cooldown, so once again quite worth it. Not as necessary once again, but I recommend them both. Spotter plane, absolutely no need. I barely even use it. I don't really like the spotter plane at all. Upgrade wise, first one is very straightforward. You want to upgrade your main batteries, of course. Second one, you want less dispersion, which is once again, and of course it buffs your secondaries, which is quite decent, or you have quite good secondaries, so getting the additional buff is nice, but mostly it's about reducing the dispersion on your main guns. Third one, damage control system, because I never really lose engine or steering. Like the times you lose steering on a battleship is when you eat the torpedo in the stern, and usually you're flooding anyway, so you'll have to repair, hence why I never really bother with this one. And fourth one, here I prefer the damage control to reduce fires. Here once again there's some options. You might go for the steering gears, but honestly the rudder shift on the Fuso isn't that bad at 15 seconds, that I had no issues with getting away with my damage control system. Which one you choose is up to you. I personally prefer this flat out damage reduction over the steering gears one, but that's my choice. Captain perks wise, I'm working towards my pretty standard Yamato build here, which I use on my main account of course. The first perk you get is situation awareness, so you need to know it. Yeah, I just consider it highly useful. I've talked about this often, but getting used to using situation awareness to your advantage is great, and this isn't the wasted points. This is 0.5.9, this point is going to be refunded to you if you get it, so all the better. So next point, basics of survivability, 15% reduction. This is basically getting, this stacks with this mod, so you basically get another one of these for free with that captain perk. So this one is fantastic. Expert marksman, reduced turret traverse. I prefer vigilance over torpedo awareness because once again you shouldn't be playing this battleship at 20 kilometers where there's little fear of torpedoes, because you're not playing it to the full extent of its powers. You're wasting the potential of the amazing Fuso if you sit far back. So get vigilance so you don't get surprised by torpedoes, or well, not as badly surprised. Fourth perk, advanced firing training. HP is absolutely useless. Like, you literally gain 4k HP. This is so useless. Getting this on a battleship is dumb. Do not do this. Instead, buff your anti-air and your great secondaries. And fifth one, I doubt I will actually go for a fifth one. I don't, on my Yamato I never went for a fifth one since I never considered it worth the effort. Rather, I usually stack up. The next perk I will be getting is Superintendent for that additional heal. On my Montana I went for manual AA because the anti-air on it was actually so good. I don't know if I'll end up doing the same thing here, but most likely the next point I will be saving up for is Superintendent. Anyway, that was my short Fuso commentary. I hope you enjoyed it.